This is Brent Richardson, and welcome to the Business Minutia Podcast, where our focus is on the details of business that are often passed over by traditional classes and leadership training. We focus on the stories of real people who have tried, failed, and learned through their experiences and are willing to share their lessons with others. Jamie, we want to continue our trend of telling some great stories of Dallas small business and mid-sized business that continue to pivot and grow and thrive during the current times. Tell us who we're talking to this week.
This week we are talking to Kathy Fielder, and this woman blew me away. She has over 20 years experience in manufacturing, the last 15 of which she's been focusing on home decor and in fashion. She has 2 boutiques, Kathy Fielder boutiques, one in Lower Greenville and one over in New Orleans. And she has a bedding collection that has been in Neiman Marcus, QVC. She's not just anybody. She has already made it.
Right. And then you go through what's happened with the COVID crisis, and her story of pivoting, I think, is very inspiring.
Right. Because when you're focusing on fashion and home decor, you would think this is the kind of business that's going to go belly up. Oh, no.
Yeah.
No, she took all the knowledge and connections from these 20 years, and she was able to play the political game and pivot to masks seamlessly.
Yeah, and we have people that will ask us, you're getting the chance to talk to all these great business leaders. What are you learning? And one of the things, I got that this past week, and one of the things that you start to see systemic behavior patterns in these successful folks.
Very true.
And this one very much, like you can hear in the interview, I jumped on it. I'm like, yeah, there is a resilience that you experience from the great ones that is the equivalent of water rolling down a hill. I don't know how we're going to get to the bottom of the hill, but the water's going to get there. It's going to figure out a way. They are not going to take no for an answer. They're going to keep working the next problem. If they're not don't have expertise and aren't experts at FDA, whatever, they figure it out. They Google, they get to the bottom of it.
There's just a fearlessness as she speaks. I may not know it yet, but I will know it.
That's right.
It is amazing.
There's a no quit. And, we want to ingrain that into our kids. I hope if you're listening out there as a business leader that you capture that as well and figure out how do you personalize that? How do you start to develop and get that resilience? Because you can do this, right?
Absolutely. That's
the inspiration that we hope you get from the interview this week. Enjoy, folks.
Actually, so it's kind of funny. I have several businesses. I own fashion boutiques, and I also own a home bedding textile manufacturing company.
Wow.
Yes. So, and I also am a designer by trade.
Okay.
I've owned 8 companies since I was 22.
Wow. Yeah. So you were just this
I'm
way.
a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah. So you were this way from the get-go.
I think I've worked for someone maybe 3 months of my entire life. Yeah. And it's just not for me.
Wow.
And I love finding a concept and feeling passionate about it and seeing it start and taking it through to the final stages and growing it and keeping it going.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you were always thinking about what the next one is, more than likely. The serial entrepreneurs do think this way.
Of course. I mean, you look for opportunities. I had someone actually reach out to me yesterday about an opportunity, and I thought, man, I don't know if I want to take on another. Sure. It has to do with masks, but it's just another option with them. And so, but yeah, no, you've always got to be, as any good business person, if you work for someone or if you have your own company, you've always got to be looking for opportunities to grow and move up and move forward.
Right. Yeah. And to advance what you're doing.
That's right.
I think that's certain people have that mindset. I think
for sure.
Certainly the serial entrepreneurs are that way. They're constantly looking to double down.
Well, for sure. And, I think right now we've got these small and medium companies that we're kind of like keeping this economy alive.
That's right.
Right? These larger companies, they're not able to do that as much as we are. And so it's very, very important to protect our small businesses and shop local and support them and be mindful of them and the challenges that you're going through as a local business.
That's right. Yeah.
My Dallas boutique is sitting closed. I don't keep it open.
Okay.
Because we're looking at that scenario of how we might try to open it back up, or how we maybe host private parties, or how that looks. But we really, it's a difficult time to navigate.
So tell me about your business today, or tell our listeners a little bit about your business today in terms of how did you get here?
Oh, goodness. So how did I get here? I didn't quit.
Okay.
I mean, really, when people ask me what's your formula for success, and I don't know that I'm successful yet, but I'm sure working on it, you don't quit.
And
No matter what gets thrown at you, curveball, slider, you just you strike out and you get back up and you go back up. I mean, Babe Ruth struck out more times than he hit, a ball out of the park, right? So
how many employees do you have?
employees, let's see, I have companies in Dallas and in New Orleans.
Okay.
I have a boutique in New Orleans as well. And so all in all, I think we have 10 to 15 people, maybe 20 in and out doing different jobs in different, businesses.
Okay.
Like I said, I own a manufacturing company.
Okay.
It's more bedding based. And so
Okay.
that obviously is a different skill set than someone who's working as an associate in the boutique.
Sure. How do you mux your time between those?
Well, so New Orleans was obviously closed also. I just now opened that back up about 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
I just went there for the first time since February,
Okay.
in the middle of July. My daughter and I drove there and kind of got her back open. My marketing director, Chandler, went there as well. And so I haven't figured that out just yet.
Okay.
A great example is a big challenge this coming weekend is I have no one that can work at the boutique. And so trying to figure out, we finally gotten some continuity back a few weeks and we had some foot traffic, and now I've got to pivot. I've got to figure out how I'm going to get that thing open over the weekend and make sure that we look like we're there and we're stable.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so you're mentioning pivot, and I want to get back into a little bit more about your business and what life is like before COVID. But since you mentioned it, let's dive into that a little bit. So, what's the effect had with COVID-19 and with the issues? How has that affected your business?
Well, it made me get very creative. So the week before the shutdown happened here in Dallas, I said to my husband, there's going to be a huge need that someone's going to need to fill. And I'm not exactly sure what it is just yet, but I'm going to find it. If I had not done it, then I would not still be in business, most likely.
Yeah.
And that Saturday before the shutdown, I reached out to one of my factories in China, and I said, can you get me masks? And my contact there said, yeah, I think I can. And so within 3 weeks, we had gone through the paces with the FDA. And within 5 weeks, I had several 100,000 pieces of PPE sitting in Dallas, waiting to be distributed to people and to hospitals. It's funny, I was remodeling a house.
Wow.
And had to move the day that the first shipment of masks arrived. And the majority of these masks were for a hospital, a big hospital system.
Okay.
But also the very next day after these masks arrived, it was announced that people had to wear a mask and you could not get them.
Yeah.
I mean, you absolutely could not get them. Amazon didn't have them. Nobody had them. But Kathy Fielder, we had them.
So Kathy, where does that come from? So there's so many folks that I know that are out there struggling through this time right now. And yet when I talk to successful folks in times right now that have been able to pivot, there's something there that either from your history or your past that caused you to think that way, because you were looking at an opportunity.
Sure.
that you saw, even though it had some strong benefit, you were looking for those kinds of opportunities. What would you point to in your past that created that mindset?
Well, in 2009, I lost 7 figures of revenue in 8 months when the economy crashed, the housing crash.
Okay, that'll do it.
And it was awful, absolutely awful. And I went to my husband and I said, you know what, I think I can make it through this. I said, but I need to borrow some money from our family in order to do it. And he said, okay, you're a good businesswoman. I trust you. You make the decision and you run with it. In 2010, I paid back every single penny of that. When I watched what was happening with COVID, I thought, I'm never going through that again.
Yeah.
However, I will say that importing PPE, masks, and all of this was a very, very incredibly volatile situation when I was doing it. It was a very socially sensitive subject. Mm-hmm. It was an incredibly politically sensitive subject. And so in hindsight, that was actually more terrifying than the 2009.
Okay.
I had several $100,000 that I had wired over to China, and the rules changed every day. The FDA changed the rules every day.
Right.
China changed the rules every day. I had masks sitting on a dock for 2 weeks that I had purchase orders for, and I was just sitting on the money. I paid 5 figures, $50,000, give or take, just to fly it here from China to get it to my door in Dallas. And that's a lot of money to be gambling with.
Yeah,
sure. And that's not the cost. That's just simply air freight.
And you're right. This was during a time where that was what you'd see on the news was people trying to get PPE, trying to get these types of things. And then, in my realm of the world is a lot of manufacturing. It's technical manufacturing, but we immediately started hearing conversations about should manufacturing be shifted back to the U.S.
Well, and Trump, but that's been a big platform for Trump, actually. And,
right.
and so I own a domestic manufacturing company. I know I said I imported the PPE from China, but China is one of the number one makers, obviously, of it.
Right.
But my manufacturing company is 95% domestically made here in Dallas.
Yeah.
But because I did have those ties, and when you think about it, masks are really just fabric, different kind of fabric, different certifications, but basically it's just constructing something. So once you manufacture this, it's not that difficult to just put the pieces in place to manufacture something else, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And so that's really where it came from. It was such a journey. It was a stressful time. I was homeschooling my son and my daughter, and
while running all these things at the same time.
Oh my goodness! And
but you saw opportunity.
There was an opportunity, and it paid off. And the gamble, was worth the risk. There was even some pushback, from people not understanding, thinking, well, you should give all this away for free, right?
Yeah.
People who didn't really understand what the dynamics were and what was going on and
Sure.
some of those things and some of the government's play within all of this.
Right.
And so, gracefully helping people understand that you and I, as just a citizen, need to be able to protect ourselves also.
Yeah.
That was a big part of it. So that was kind of, I pride myself on having a very respectful brand and standing for things that are really important and taking care and kindness to people. And so, to have someone say, well, you're just capitalizing on this for yourself. That was, it was hard because it was sensitive and it
Sure.
was a very, very dynamic time, to say the least.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about the success of your company prior to this, because I think that to give some listeners some perspective on the journey. Like where can I find your clothes, your material? Where would I be able to buy this?
So Isabella Collection by Kathy Fielder, IsabellaCollection.com. That is my bedding and upholstery line. We sell to Neiman's, Horchow. I've been on air at QVC. So that kind of, I've been doing that since 2005. I launched that in 2005.
Okay.
And that also had a lot of challenges for its launch. There's no business that becomes successful that doesn't, just in general, life is about challenge, and it's what you do once you face those challenges and get up from them and do with it. That's what makes us successful, right?
Right.
And there's so much more success than just financial success, right?
Yeah.
There's the success, and that's the one thing that I hope the gift that I give my children is showing them that quitters never win and winners never quit, right?
Yeah.
It's an age-old saying, but it's true. But besides that, I also, last year, I bought a property in New Orleans on Magazine Street. And I opened up a boutique. I already had a boutique here in Dallas. And I opened up a boutique in New Orleans, Kathy Fielder Boutique, and that's kathyfielderboutique.com. And it's very, very kind of far, from the bedding and the textiles. But I'd wanted to move into fashion for several years now and just kind of transform into the fashion side of things as well. And so that's really where that was born.
Okay. And how do you crack into somebody like Neiman's? That's not something you just carry and just say, hey, I've got some shirts. You want to sell them?
Yeah, no. It's funny. I had a rep that came to me at the time. I owned a shop where I had all my designs up front. And I was an interior designer by trade, so I did a lot of show homes. So I had furniture. I had a workroom in the back. And so we just did all of our bedding and textiles in the back rather than having to contract out for it because it was just too expensive whenever, at that point, I think I was 27 or 28 maybe. And so, I think I just kind of, it launched from there, and the rep came in and said, hey, these are great. You should show them to my showroom. At the time, that showroom at the World Trade Center, Dallas World Trade Center, was the one of the number one suppliers to Neiman's for bedding and textiles. Currently, I have, I think, the second longest running bedding collection, maybe the first at Neiman's and Horchow. It's called Maria Christina.
Yeah.
I've been running that since 2006.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow. That by itself is a huge undertaking and a success just to break in like that. That's huge.
Yeah. I think it is huge, and it does take effort, and it's not easy to deal with retailers, especially I feel like, obviously in today's marketplace, it's harder than it's ever been. You want to talk about pivoting. That's a definite pivot.
How so?
Well, I mean, they don't have buying dollars, and you're looking at, companies that are filing bankruptcy. You've got, Neiman's and JCPenney and all of these companies that,
Right.
they're struggling. Of course they're struggling, J.Crew. And so I think it's harder than ever because they have to be so much more selective.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I don't think that a lot of retailers are going to be picking up new lines at this point. I think that you'll see them cultivate the lines they have as much as they can in order to keep them kind of steady.
How is the transition from brick and mortar to online sales, which is, the last 20 years, that's been such a heavy, and it's even more so right now with people not going into a store or fear of it and they're staying home. How's that affected your industry?
Well, so, my industry, I feel like I have my feet in two industries, obviously, with the textiles and bedding and then the fashion. And we have tried to drive traffic online as much as we can. And that really is our new business model, is driving traffic to our online sites that I mentioned before.
Yeah.
Because we know that people are still scared. And I'm hoping that I'm wrong, but I think we're going to see a resurgence in the fall once everyone's back and in school and all of these things. And so I think we're going to see the pace slow again.
Mm-hmm.
It's already slow, but even maybe a little slower as people go, okay, we're going to stay home, we're going to stay safe, which they should. I mean, I understand that, right? And so we're really, I know, and I'm sure most smart business owners they're moving their business online because it's incredibly important to showcase your brand, not only through websites, but also social media. Social media is a huge player for us. It's very important. We have an Instagram at Kathy Fielder and then at Kathy Fielder Boutique, and we really try to run those full circle with our websites.
Yeah, I had this conversation with the CEO of the Dallas Citizens Council. We were talking about the pivot that a lot of folks are having to go through, where getting into that stream of the online flow is going to be key for them.
It's absolutely
key.
Because
the brick and mortar it was already shifting, and this seems to just accelerate it further. And if you can't get into the flow and get into that stream, but again, I think it sounds like you guys have been working on that, thinking about that well before all of this.
We have been definitely working on it, yes.
Which helps to be in ahead. So you go through. So maybe let's come back to the COVID crisis and what happens here. What was the effect initially on your businesses?
Well, like everyone else, it just kind of had to stop, right? At the time, we had a website. We weren't driving as much traffic there because we were relying more on our brick and mortar locations. And so, when it first started happening, literally my marketing director and I spent 24/7 for 5 weeks working on masks.
Okay.
And continuing to try to bring in product, not really even bring in product, but feature the product and drive some sales online, right? Masks were so big, and when we finally got them in and got them online, I mean, it literally saved us for a little bit. And it was a huge factor. I can't begin to say how many people have said, I couldn't find any, and you finally had some, and I felt safe, and I could go out again, and I'm just so grateful to you.
Yeah.
And doctors that we were asking and working with were like, oh, thank you for getting these here. We're so grateful. I mean, we now we have a huge assortment, fun ones for kids, and we have 3-plies for kids and KN95s for kids. At the time when we first started, the only thing that I could get was KN95s and 3-ply FDA certified surgical masks.
Yeah.
And we had doctors saying, we cannot get N95s, we need your KN95s. And literally we're just so appreciative that we were doing it. And so that's really, when COVID hit, we weren't still. I mean, we were going, I've never gone so hard in my life. And it literally was one of those things that it was just like a full on assault to get it done.
Yeah. So you're getting these sourced. Where are those sourced from now or today? Is it the same? Is it still?
It's kind of all over.
Okay.
China obviously is a huge player, but we have some domestic producers also.
Okay.
We're looking now, and I think we've come up with a strategy to do corporate masks.
Okay.
Printed ones.
Yeah.
And so that's something that we're looking at. It's so funny. If you had asked me in January if I was going to be in the mask business, I would have been like, no, you're crazy. There's no way. And I know more about every certification of masks that you could possibly need to know and more.
So that was my next question is it seems like your background doesn't really fit in necessarily to being a medical expert, but you've got to go pivot to that as well and tell me a little bit about how you gain that experience.
By this grit and skin of my teeth by Google, thankfully. The factories that I was dealing with in India and China, they don't always have access to some of the information because they're limited on what they can acquire, Google, that sort of thing. So literally we were just feeding each other information and finding solutions, FDA, all of these different places, getting certifications, making sure, I can look up a certification for FDA and NIOSH faster than anybody on the planet and go, oh, nope. And there were counterfeits involved. I mean, there was all of these different, very interesting and dynamic, scary situations.
But it wasn't just a website you go to and order masks from China. You're having to go through the process of putting the design together.
No, not necessarily. So you look for FDA certifications. There are different certifications. Obviously, a KN95 is basically an N95, right? But it's a Chinese version, so it cannot be FDA certified. That's kind of something that a lot of people don't necessarily know. But its quality is 1% or not even 1% less than an N95. Right? Then there's NIOSH certifications. So there's a difference between NIOSH and FDA and all of these things. So it's actually you're looking for product that has these different certifications because then you don't have to design it's designed, and it's quality.
But you've got to get neck deep into this real fast.
So deep. I mean, within 1 week, I think maybe 9 days, I had wired over my first wire transfer. I mean, and that was working 24/7 and on the phone with China. I mean, every night at dinner, I'd get a call from my guy in China, and it'd be like a little, and Jeremy, I'd be like, I'm sorry, babe, my kids, I got to take this. Right? And I remember one night we were talking at the dinner table, and I was like, I'm going to ride out to the barn tomorrow with my daughter, right? Because we're big horse people. And Jeremy goes, babe, I don't think you can do that. With what I see you're doing, I think you're going to have to sit tight and work 24 hours a day if you really want to make this happen. And I was like, you know what, you're right.
And the timing was critical, so it wasn't something
so critical.
To be relevant at that time, you had to move.
Well, it's so true, and it was very dangerous time to be importing. There was at one point a mandate by the Chinese government that anything marked with FDA would not leave the dock. And this would change, and you would hear things about product being confiscated off of docks. And our government was making all kinds of changes. And some of that was warranted because there was a lot of counterfeit flying around. And so you had to be very cognizant of where these certifications were coming from. And they were a little tricky, and you had to know and do your due diligence in order to get them here and get the right product here.
Got it. Yeah. So maybe one of the things that the element of fashion, when does that come into the mask piece? And is it really there? I'm thinking about this because we were talking about kids earlier before we were recording. My son is making his birthday list right now, and one of the items he had on his birthday list was, do you recall? I'm sure you've seen the movie Aliens, where they've got they have masks now that look like you've got an alien on your face, like the movie. And I'm looking at this like, really?
Again, who would have thought a mask would be our number one statement piece?
But I assume that's an element that you're bringing to it as well.
Of course, absolutely. And when it first hit, we even started making them here. Right? And I did a whole video on how to make a mask at home because people were having a hard time getting them and acquiring them. And we were still waiting for ours to get here. And we were working on different prototypes. But no, I mean, on KathyFielderBoutique.com, we have all kinds of masks. I think we now have 10 or 15 different SKUs. Ones with unicorns, camo.
You'll like that one too.
Dino. I mean, all of those things. And then we have the certified types, that if you're looking for a little bit more of a security and that sort of thing. We have, I'm trying to think, we have thermometers, touchless thermometers on there now. We have a whole section on the site that says masks plus COVID, and then you can go over and order a great pair of pants right after that.
At the same time.
At the same time, right? Yeah.
Are you starting to see your that side of your business coming back?
For sure. And we actually did maintain it relatively well. I mean, again, we were so focused on the importing of this PPE. But after we got those here, we really rounded back, and started really focusing in on online sales and pushing online sales. To be honest with you, we got the masks online and we wanted the product around to support because at the end of the day, people still want to maybe buy something fun that's a good price that makes them feel pretty or feel better or this sort of thing. And so, that's one of the reasons why we want to keep it strong because I can't tell you how many women I've talked to that are like, man, I sure would love to be able to go out and go shopping again, right?
Sure.
Just the small things that we're not we're no longer really able to do like we used to be able to do.
Well, just to get out of the house.
Right.
It's really nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think there is opportunity there for folks that if you can pivot and offer a safe way for people to get out,
sure.
There's still a huge demand for it.
For sure. And, I will say with online shopping, it's interesting, we've just implemented free returns. So we understand that because you're shopping for an article of clothing, it might not quite work for you. And so you're welcome to return it, no problem.
Sure.
And so I do think that business owners have to be very creative in driving traffic to their site and then giving people the incentive, right? In order to continue to do business with them. Yeah. I think that it's so much easier to do business face-to-face, having someone walk into the boutique, a dynamic conversation, really engage with them.
Sure.
And so I think as we drive sales online, and everybody has to do this, that we've got to come up with engaging ways. We ask our customers on social media, what do you want to see more of? What do you like? What's your favorite thing that's come out of COVID? All these different things that maybe get us an engaging conversation with them.
I think that's when we talked about getting into the online stream, that's a really good example of a detailed piece that businesses have to think through. Because if you're getting into that, when I think about clothes affecting that, what the effect of shifting from brick and mortar to that's a huge piece. Like, I was not willing to make any online purchases of clothing until I got to the point where I realized, all right, I can return it. In which case, now that seems like it might also have an effect, because you may get people like me that are like, I'll buy 3 of these and return 2. Right? Does that have an effect, or is it, or just still it's a price you pay?
It's the price you pay, and I think it's not necessarily. I actually feel that people are pretty cognizant of small business and people who are really trying to stay in business. I feel like that we're seeing a good shift in that culture. It's for forever. We didn't offer, not forever, but for a couple months, we didn't offer free shipping, right? And we still don't, because a business, it still costs money to pack it, ship it, get it out the door, and all of those things, right? And so, but what we did come up with is to try to help is, so if you order $75 or more, then we'll offer you free shipping, right? Sure. And so again, trying to be very creative in the way that you engage people.
So how many masks a week? How many masks you targeted?
Oh man, I don't know.
And how much has that changed? Was it a surge and then it's?
Yeah, it's a pretty even amount, and quite honestly, I don't count because that's just not my personality type. My personality type is to think of more how I can market them and get them in people's hands who need them. And so, there was one week when we delivered 230,000.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of masks.
It's a lot of masks.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more than that. So over a couple week period.
Right. Yeah, and as the demand for that settled, and hopefully you start to shift back to the things that you really, well, maybe let's ask it this way. How much of what you've gone through in the last 3 months with your businesses do you anticipate leveraging or using in the future versus going back to the way things were?
I don't think that we'll ever go back to the way things were. In general, even as a person, I don't think I'll ever be back to what I was doing before, carrying kind of a high profile here in Dallas and all of those things. I think it's a very, very it's a different environment. I was always out somewhere or a guest somewhere or this or that or the other. I think that our shift will be to go really more and more online as much as we can, and kind of figure out what happens with the brick and mortar. The store in Dallas, I don't own. The store front in New Orleans, I do. So those are 2 different scenarios also, very much, right? And so, and I think it changes every day. Yeah. Until we see kind of the COVID issue evening out, or maybe we have a vaccine, or we get a good go ahead that yes, these steroids that they're administering in the hospital are really working, and we all feel pretty confident about it. Sure. I think that it's going to change 50 times. To be honest with you. Yeah,
and then as we get into flu season, well, hopefully if we can get past November, it's a little less politically charged.
Hopefully.
That would be nice, and we can get to the science.
Oh, there's so many conversations I can have about that, but we'll leave that political conversation.
Separate podcast.
Yes.
But I think then you get into flu season, and then it's still to me very gray. That I think it's going to be quite some time. Even my employees are asking me, when do we come back? I think you should probably settle in for the long haul in this.
I agree.
Get a good setup there. You can work at home, whatever you need, and make that work. And I think whatever cadence you need for your own mental health too, because it's definitely stirred everybody up in that regard.
100%. And I mean, I think, my staff, my team and I, we kept it pretty small here on site, but we've been working together since the masks arrived, and we were considered an essential business. We had a stamp from City of Dallas, and we were able to be here and working, and we were all very careful. Obviously, we were going home and just coming here and being very cognizant that we all had families that we wanted to protect. And so, but we've been kind of here through this whole thing, and it was, in a way, that was such a blessing to be able to have a team where we had something to go do. Because if you think about us all just sitting at home going, okay, what do we do? What's next?
Sure.
How do we handle this? What's our next? How do we pivot through this? What's the plan? And so at least it gave us something to keep our minds off things a little bit, which was helpful. I think
help you keep your sanity.
A little bit of sanity. Yeah,
absolutely.
It got me out of homeschooling for an hour or two a day.
That by itself, I can appreciate. Now I'm stuck at home to where I'm having to get more involved in the homeschooling, but I've actually enjoyed that as well because my background's math. My wife's background is English and journalism, and so when it comes to the math stuff, I find myself doing a little bit of algebra tutoring.
There you go.
So that's okay. I don't mind.
It's funny. My husband, it was so odd to go from all of us, always off in all these different directions, to him. I mean, everybody always home, right?
Yeah.
And so and I was really so busy with importing these masks that I was even a little bit distracted, Yeah. And so it was nice when they finally got here and we all kind of settled in. And I feel like it's been a real blessing and a really wonderful experience in that regard, because I think our family is slower and closer. And so that's actually one of the things I'm most grateful for from this experience.
Yeah, for me as well. I think it will be difficult to go back to an office at this point because I'm used to being with my kids all day. I'm
Absolutely.
used to now. You have to control your schedule and block things off so that you're not going crazy, because I know some people are working too much. But no, I think it's something that I see lots of evidence from friends of the time that they're spending with their families and with their kids. That, especially you talk about in my line of work, we're having to travel a lot, and now all that time's gone. Now part of me, I'm also itching a little bit. My wife's like, "You need to get out of the house. You're driving me crazy. You need to go travel someplace."
My husband's leaving on a road trip for some work stuff today, and I said, "Are you excited to just kind of have a few days out of the house?" Right? Because that was his whole life before.
Yeah.
As a consultant, he was always on the road.
Yep.
So.
Yep. I would be. I am. My travel's coming soon, and I'm itching to get away.
I bet.
So you were nominated for an award recently. Talk to us a little bit about that.
I was nominated for the Courageous Marketing Leader by Ignite V.
Okay.
Or actually, I think I was nominated by Cynthia Smoot.
Okay.
And so I am excited to find the results on that. I'm honored to be nominated for something like that. And
that's mainly for the ability to recognize the need and pivot and remarket your business in a different way.
Absolutely. And, I mean, it took a lot of courage. I mean, it really did. And it was a scary time in my life. And so I'm really grateful that I had the experience and actually I learned so much out of it. I'll never be quite the same, which is it's a good thing. That
leads into my next question, which it sounds like you're the kind of person that's always pivoting. You're always thinking about what the next opportunity is. You got anything you're thinking about right now that you're willing to share?
Well, actually we've launched a vlog, and I'm doing a series of interviews with dynamic women. This is a very important project for me. It's been for several years. I've wanted to kind of launch it, and now seemed like the right time. I think there's a message and a need for hope and positivity, and how do you come out of something like this, and what banding together, not just women, I mean all of us, and figuring out how we move forward in a big way. And so that's a project that we're putting together. It's launching here over the next couple weeks. I'm very excited about it.
Very cool.
Yes, and then I'm looking at a couple of other things in masks, believe it or not.
Okay.
And that's in the very early stages, so that one I can't say much about.
All right, she's still thinking. You can tell the brain's always on to the next thing.
Absolutely.
Usually with serial entrepreneurs, it's that way. Yes. Definitely not my DNA, but I'm glad there are people like you out there that do think that way. Maybe some of our last questions here. If you go back in time to March, what's the thing you're going to whisper in your ear to tweak or change how things have gone through the COVID crisis or through the recent happenings. Doesn't have to just be particularly COVID. Could be shifting to online pivot, anything like that. What's the thing you'd wish you'd done differently, or what you'd told yourself to accelerate the process for your business?
Actually, there's nothing that would have accelerated what we did. We did it at such a fast pace and a frantic pace. And, so that I think the one thing that I would have told myself and reminded myself of is that it was going to be okay.
Yeah.
That if you keep working hard and keep putting one foot in front of the other, you're not going to fail. You might get knocked down. Yeah. But if you get back up, you can pivot and you can make it happen. And so that's probably what I would have, I spent a lot of nights waking up at 4 a.m, kind of worried and so much anxiety. But granted, COVID was such none of us have ever been through anything like that.
Right.
Right. And so, it was like living in a novel of some sort, a Stephen King novel. Everybody, talks about that. And so, but yeah, I would have told myself, you can do this. You're strong.
Where does that resilience come from?
I don't know. I've always had it. I don't really know how to quit. That's not always a good thing. Every now and then it might be a good idea to say, okay, let's move to where we can focus on where our stronger, attributes are. When I was 22-ish, I made a goal, and I read a book a week on being successful.
Okay.
I read Think and Grow Rich 3 times by Napoleon Hill.
Okay.
I read lots of Norman Vincent Peale, Positive Thinking, People Skills, all of those things. Old school books, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And so, I think that really changed me. You put positivity in your brain 24/7 every day, all day long, then that's what's going to come out. And I think, I learned so many principles of success from those books, right? And principles of success don't really change.
Sure.
They're always going to be the same principles. We may wrap them up in different packages and make them more current to our situation, but principles of success are principles of success.
Right. Yep. Those axioms usually will hold true, at least the ones you'll remember.
Absolutely.
Right. And you latch on to. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Have a favorite book out of those? Of the ones that you went through in that phase?
You know what? I love Norman Vincent Peale so much. So any of his books, The Power of Positive Thinking, I think he was just a great thinker and just lover of people, and just so willing to be a servant to people. And so that's probably my favorite. Excellent. Yeah. I haven't read that. I'm going to have to add that to my list. And he wrote a second one, and the name is escaping me. I wish I could think of it, but he really is. He just has really positive things to tell you and to say, hey, you know what? And he also, he says a lot of times what I have to do with my children. Hey, you're okay. Yeah. You can sit there and feel sorry for yourself, but I can relate to it as a parent. It's not going to help you. It's not going to help you. Tremendously powerful to maintain a positive attitude. It is so important, and to realize that you are not the victim. That's why I ask you the resilience question. You want to ingrain it in your children as well. And that was one thing that I've been. I like the fact that my children watched what I went through, because they saw the struggle. Yeah. And they saw me get up out of the struggle, and they saw me succeed through the struggle. My daughter, Isabella, who's 16, almost 17, got to witness that. And she's witnessed it her whole life. But I feel like this was such an extraordinary situation that no matter what she has to, kind of come up against in her life, she's going to go, hey, no, I can make it through this. Yep. And that's the best, one of the best lessons that I can give to her. I don't know how many small business and just business owners in general, regardless of size, that I talk to that will need to go learn something in a new space, and they would, kind of ask me questions like, I don't have expertise there. I'm like, no, you don't need who becomes the expert? The person who researches and looks it up and does, figures it out. Google's your best friend, man. Yeah. That is that way it works. I knew nothing about FDA certified masks or and you just got to dig in. But you have to have that ambition and drive and resilience that says, I'm going to figure this out. And you got to be a little creative too. Absolutely. You really do. Even in importing masks and working with FDA, I had to get creative and come up with ways and read between the lines and figure out, reading what's coming out in the press and going, oh, that's what's happening there. So I need to come over here and work in this space, that sort of thing. Kathy, I appreciate the time. Anything you want to let listeners know to promote for your business? Anything you want to highlight? Well, I appreciate being here so much. I really enjoyed just chatting with you. And you just check us out online and on social media, kathyfielderboutique.com and Kathy Fielder Boutique on Instagram.
All right. Alien masks coming? Not yet.
I'm sure they're somewhere in the mix, 100%.
All right. I'm sure we'll find something there for my son. The unicorn one, he'll definitely take part in. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great interview. Really enjoyed the time with Kathy and getting to listen and learn. Every time I get an opportunity to sit down with leaders like this, I learn something. So this was really awesome, inspiring. Hope it inspires other folks in the area here. I know we have listeners outside of Texas. Hope it inspires you as well. But really awesome. We've gotten tons of great feedback over the past 2 weeks, specifically of new listeners that we've had join in. We're going to be doing kind of best of our first 20 episodes coming up here soon, because I know there's a lot of content and some people just say, I can't go listen to all of it yet, but I'm working. So we'll give you a little catch up that's there. If you are some of those folks, we get tons of texts and phone calls and emails that people are really enjoying listening to the podcast. I have a good friend that I worked with for a long time that had given me some feedback on that last week. That was really meaningful. I really appreciate that.
And Brent, those personal conversations are fantastic, and they help us know what our listeners want.
Sure.
But we have got to make sure that people are hopping over and subscribing, and leaving a review.
Yeah, there's 3 things I would say you can do to help with exposure, to let other people know about us. That's go share in social media wherever you do that. You can go take our posts and share, or go onto iTunes and leave us a review or a rating. It's one of the only spots where you're listening to podcasts where the rating makes a difference. The others don't really care, but that one certainly does. So go leave us some ratings. We get some ratings piling up there. That's pretty awesome. So go leave something there, and make sure you're subscribing so you're getting the latest episode when we come out with them on Mondays. Have a good week, folks.